Hi everyone, and welcome to the first video in this series of making a Flappy Bird clone in Java. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new package, new project, and a new package. I've already done this. And we're going to call the first class game. This game class is going to hold a lot of the code for the logic of our game, and we'll be making the game objects later on. So first things first, we need to set up the game window, where the window on the screen that we're actually going to be rendering the game to and that we're going to be playing the game on. So let's declare some really simple variables to start with. We're going to first of all make a width and a height for the game, and we're going to make this final static, so it is a class variable rather than an instance variable, because there's only going to actually be one instance of this game class, but we want to make sure we can easily access the width and height outside of this class, and we can do this very easily by making them class variables. So we're going to have a width of 800 and a height of 600. So these are final and static. Static to make it a class variable, and final means it can't be changed once it's been initialized. We'll then create a string, private string, and we're going to call this game name. And we'll just call this Flappy Bird. The reason we have a string for this is because we're going to use this game name string to update the title of the window. As you can see in here, every program in Windows will have it. It's like a title at the top of the bar. That's what this string is going to go to. So the next thing we need is an actual Java object that is going to allow us to draw to a window. And there's different ways to do this, but the way we're going to do it in this video series is by using a canvas. And we're going to declare and initialize it up in the global scope just because it's easier and we can. And the import for this is java.awt.canvas. Again, there's a couple of ways to do this, and you might have seen this a different way, but for this tutorial we're going to be using the canvas, as I think it's a fairly simple way to render to the screen, and it's a good start in game development. So once we've got these simple variables here, we'll go ahead and create a simple method called start. It's going to be return type void because we don't actually need to return anything from it. And I'm going to add a couple of comments here so we know what we're doing with this. We're going to initialize the windows first of all. That will be the canvas and also a JFrame, which we're going to attach the canvas to. And then at some point there's going to be the game loop, which will consist of a Boolean variable called running. And this is true by default. And then we'll have a while loop that basically says while running. So we're going to initialize all our stuff up here, and then we'll reach the game loop down here. And the game loop is going to have a couple of functions, which we'll come to in just a bit. So let's initialize the windows first of all. First thing we're going to do is make an instance of the object dimension. We're going to call this game size, and we're going to set it equal to a new dimension. And we're going to import this. It's java.awt.dimension, and the values we're going to initialize this with, width and height, are the game.width and game.height, the class variables for this class here. We have 800 and 600. Then using this dimension, we're going to initialize a JFrame and also initialize the canvas. So we're going to go through the options here pretty quickly. We'll create the JFrame, we'll just call it game window. This is going to be the window that the canvas sits inside of. And a parameter that JFrame takes in its constructor is the title of the window. We're just going to stick game name in there. We're going to then do a couple of options with the JFrame. One of them is set default close operation. What this does here is it means when we press the X of the JFrame window, it's going to make sure the program stops and shuts down. Because by default, when you close a JFrame, it hides it. It doesn't actually destroy it and de-initialize the program, but when we press X on the game, we do want the game to exit, so that's what this does. We're then going to set some really simple options. One of them is going to be set size, and we're going to use it with that dimension we just created. One of them is going to be set resizable. Let's make sure we spell game window correctly first. Set resizable. This is going to be set to false. We don't want to be able to resize the window because the code we're going to do for the game isn't going to account for a resizable window, although it will account for changing these values. It just means that once these values are set and the game is initialized, you can't resize the window while the game is playing. Next option, pretty important one, is going to be set visible. This is going to make the game window visible. That's obviously set to true. And then we're going to initialize some of the canvas options. So we'll say game.setSize to the dimension. And then there's a couple more options very similar to this. We have set minimum size, set maximum size, and we have set preferred size. Now, the reason we have to do all four of these is because Canvas can sometimes have a tendency to resize in the parent that it is sitting inside of. So basically, this is just for like clarification. We set the initial size, then we set the minimum and maximum size and the preferred size all to exactly the same thing, just to make sure that it is set to that size that we want. We can then go ahead and access the game window and call add. Whoops, not action. We're going to call add and then the game. That is going to insert the canvas into the JFrame. And then one last thing we're going to do is set game window dot set location relative to and null. And what that is going to do is when we press run, it's going to make sure the window is centered in the screen and not initialized in the top corner here. So we've set up a basic window and some basic options. In the next video, we're going to be looking more into the structure of the game's logic.